big data binder, you'll have all the students' most recent evaluations. At the time that we worked on the case study, Mila's evals were about a year old. So that means they were done when she transitioned from pre-K into school. So we've got about a year of growth that's not going to be necessarily reflected in these data points, but it gives you an idea of the challenge that Mila's team has had in designing her instruction and supporting her through this literacy lesson. So just real quick, from the psych eval, we pulled out that she needs extra time to process. And that makes sense, right? If you ask a student with an intellectual disability, specifically Down syndrome, if you ask a question, you have to wait and give them time to pull that information forward to give you an answer. It also noted that she needs visual supports and manipulatives, a full scale IQ of about 55. Again, super hard to test at that age because there's so many components of those evals, guys, that she doesn't understand the instructions for. She just doesn't have enough experience to demonstrate her skills. So I imagine that as she's retested over the years, you'll see this become more robust, but there were some limiting factors for the team doing the evaluations. The psych examiner also noted the need to reteach the skills and different steps in order to help Mila take the information from her short-term memory and cement it in her long-term memory. And that she's going to need lots of verbal and nonverbal reinforcement. And you'll get to watch lots of video of Mila in the training today, and she eats up social praise. So that verbal reinforcement is very powerful for her. The speech eval, when our speech team went through that evaluation, one of the big things that they wanted us to highlight was that her articulation, so her ability to produce the sounds, was so impaired that she couldn't be tested. And that's pretty impactful when you think about learning to read. So that was one we needed to definitely bring forward. The team is also looking at different options for augmentative communication. So when Mila is working on lessons or trying to talk to a friend and her articulation is so bad that she cannot be understood, what is a repair strategy? Or what is a support that she might need? So her team is currently digging into that. And then notes that she has both deficits in receptive in what she takes in and expressive in what she's able to produce language. So speech-wise, speech and language are significantly impaired according to the evaluation results. Looking at the OT eval, in the lesson today, you'll see different segments where Mila is asked to write, to encode, and she was working on the letter I. And so from all of those evaluations, we were able to say, oh, she's got a really immature grasp. Her visual motor skills were very delayed. She couldn't consistently, at the time, copy vertical and horizontal lines. And you'll see some difficulty that she has with fine motor skills. And then maybe to consider like graded difficulty, from like finger painting to using a highlighter and really kind of working your way up with those fine motor skills. And to note that if the activity isn't about the motor skills, right? We're not teaching the motor skill, we're teaching the letter I, that we might need to consider some assistive technology. You'll also see today that Mila needs support with seating. And also you might even notice that she switches back and forth between left hand and right hand. So that dominance hasn't necessarily emerged yet. Before we move on, I want to point out this section down at the bottom, the deficits that are typical for students with Down syndrome. We added that section because as we got through the eval, we were like, man, this team is going to struggle to be able to put all these pieces together because there were limitations in what the evaluators were able to get when they did the evaluations transitioning from pre-K. So we did some research. What are some deficits that are typical for students with Down syndrome? And some of that research yielded, kiddos with an intellectual disability need multiple exposures, right? So thinking about that lesson as designed, she's probably not going to get it at the pace of the students in a general education classroom. She's going to need that repeated exposure. It's going to need to be a concrete representation with direct and intensive instruction. Students with Down syndrome often have a short attention span, so we're going to need to be changing those activities up pretty frequently. And then the memory piece, guys, is really, really, really important for us to think about as we're teaching new skills, as we're asking Mila to pull information out of her long-term memory and apply it to novel situations. So we're really going to be attending to that memory piece today as we talk about these instructional strategies and specially designed instruction for her. And then that expressive language deficit, we're going to dig into that a little bit as well.